And we should be live.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, April 28th. It is 1:02 p.m. Here, and we're having a meeting through the Zoom platform. We have, I believe, 5 items on our agenda today, as well as probably a couple that'll fall under any related items. And if you'll pardon me, I don't have the agenda up. Sorry, guys. Up first on our agenda today is a resolution to further extend the proclamation of the mayor, March 13th, 2020. Actually, Chris, is Randy on this call yet?
Mr. Allison is on the call.
He is on the call? Okay. Randy, do you want to take this one first?
Audio is loading. Give it a second here.
You're
Sure.
unmuted, Mr. Allison, but your video.
Yes, okay. Yeah, well, I'm not a member of the committee, but you can go ahead.
Your name's on as the person who's introducing this item.
Oh, really?
Surprise, Randy.
Oh, I didn't get, okay. Yeah, it's essentially the same form that we had last time to extend it with the openings for the date and the number of days, the limit on crowd size. So that's basically what I believe we have to decide in light of the governor's including us in the north central section and everything that has to go with it. Those restrictions or lack of restrictions that will be on the north central section and how we want to handle that. I think that's a group discussion we have to have. I'm not sure how everybody feels about how we're progressing. Our numbers of positives are climbing as a county. I'm not myself sure exactly what that means. Is that indicative of cases that were tested a week or two earlier? And I think we're going to have to see how that plays out and how we want to handle it as far as group sizes. I assumed going forward, as we increase the group size, we'll probably go up the way we came down.
Exactly.
I think that's kind of prudent. If things break loose and everything's great in 3 weeks, we can address that anytime. But I think we have to have a plan in place, how we want to approach not just the next, how far out we want to go and all of that. So that's a discussion we have to have as a group, but we can start that here, of course.
Mayor Slaughter, what are your thoughts on that? What intelligence is the administration getting in terms of how Lycoming County's looking as a whole, how Williamsport's looking, and what good guidance?
Well, we were on Councilman Yoder was there this morning as well. We were on a call with Steve Johnson this morning. And as we move forward here and as this progresses and we get guidance from the state and federal government, it's really that 14-day period looks like what it's going to be the baseline now. And we really need additional guidance, especially for the health system, to know what 14 days they're discussing. So as we start to slowly reopen here, if it's May 11th, for example, does that start to 14 days that we have to start to calculate the numbers, or is it, a few days prior to, is it May 8th? And so we don't have that guidance yet. And I have a call into the governor's office now to try to get some clarification, because it does appear from everything, I'm sure everybody else is reading it and seeing it too, that Williamsport might be the first classified city to start to slowly reopen in the Commonwealth. And so, as was discussed this morning, we want to make sure we do that in a measured way and hopefully be the model for the rest of the Commonwealth. But I would agree with Councilman Allison that we need to at least extend it through the governor's date of May 8th. And then there's going to have to be this week and next week additional guidance provided as we start to reopen. We don't even know, as we discussed on the call this morning, we're not sure yet what is, the businesses, what's included, what's not included. We know the golf course, obviously this Friday, and some other areas, construction, of course. But as we look at that May 8th timeframe, we just need additional guidance. And Councilman Yoder can probably add some stuff too.
Yeah, no, Mayor Slaughter, I would agree. One of the big things I took away from our call this morning was that I think there is a lot of uncertainty and a lack of clarity as far as, not only dates, but I think more details as far as what the actual yellow phase looks like, as he has put out, versus the green phase versus where we're at. So I would agree with that. I in my mind coming into this call, I kind of thought if we're gonna, knowing with everything that's out there now, the yellow phase looks to say that there are still no large gatherings. So in my mind, it's a bi-weekly, just check this out. Where are we at? Do we extend it? What have you? The number might change. But something to consider. I did just read here, I think it was this morning or last night. It looks like the Trump administration has asked the Attorney General to take a look or keep an eye out for states and municipalities that are overstepping, as he puts it, or I guess contradicting what the feds are putting out. So there may be a legality thing that we may just want to verify that we're not putting ourselves into, if that is the case. Again, I read it online. To what degree it's true or not, I don't know, but it is something we may want to keep in the back of our minds before Thursday night.
And the other piece, we're at 58 right now. It looks like that, and I don't want to speak for Steve Johnson, of course, he can relay the information to us, but it looks like 50 per 100,000, but paraphrasing essentially what he was saying, they need to come up with a way through the Department of Health as well as to, of those 58, how many are no longer active cases, and can subtract off as we calculate the 14-day period of new cases and active cases. So, 58, we just continue to add to the total along the way and not take any off. And that's basically right now from the Department of Health. So as we start to reopen, we need an accurate count of, new cases, old cases, and cases that are no longer active.
Yeah, I would concur.
So it sounds to me like what I'm hearing is that we'll have to have the final discussion about this on Thursday night.
And quite frankly, Councilwoman Mealy, we may still not have that guidance yet from the state or federal government by Thursday. So we may need to reconvene next week at some point as well. Clearly before the 8th, we're going to have to get a lot of guidance and then see how that applies to us.
Right. I guess it seems to me like my suggestion moving forward here from today's look at things would be that we extend the proclamation for another 2 weeks on the 30th. We always have the option of meeting and repealing it or scaling it back, but that we should move to extend the proclamation for another 2 weeks. And the question is, do we stick with that number of 10 persons? Do we stick with a number of 25? Do we stick with a number of 50? And I think that's what we'll have to sort of look for as much guidance as we can get by Thursday. Move on it somehow to extend it, and then, like I said, if after May 8th it turns out maybe we're much more in the clear than we expected, then we schedule a special meeting to reconvene and change that proclamation. But I think it's in our best interest to continue the proclamation until such a time as we get guidance that indicates otherwise. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah, I would agree.
I agree.
It might be good to check with our solicitors just in case of if there's any truth to what I saw online, but I think we'd be okay for Thursday. I would agree.
Okay.
How would any federal restrictions I don't think they'd override the state's guidance.
It seems like the
They-
state says priority here.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
And
I
then
mean, I think we'd have to be really flouting something at them, and I don't think we're contemplating that regardless.
No,
No.
Yeah.
I would agree completely, but
Yeah. And
nonetheless, it's an added layer that is floating out there. So I figured I'd at least bring it up.
Yeah.
And it does appear, as I'm looking as well, that the yellow phase it's probably going to be 10 to 25 people in the gatherings. That's kind of what it looks like, starting this very
Mhm.
slow, small gathering and then check our numbers and then.
Got it. So it sounds like then for Thursday, we're more than likely best off to extend for another 2 weeks till our next scheduled meeting, the number of 10. And then if the guidance changes in the interim, we can always schedule a special meeting to change our numbers as well. Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But we can see what happens by, April 30th will take us right up against May 1st, which is when a couple of things are reopening. So
Yep.
we'll have to see. The one thing I would say, Ms. Frank, Janice, can I possibly get you to send me a Word document version of that resolution?
I can send that to you, Liz. I have it on Word.
If you could, that'd be awesome. It needs
Yep.
some. This is
I
a
can do
random, but it needs some serious editing. And
Yep. That was just what I just forwarded along what the PA state mayor sent out.
Yeah, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think we could clean it up a bit so it's easier for people to understand before Thursday night.
Yep, I will forward that to you.
Okay. And I was trying to pull it off the PDF, and I was going to have to retype the whole thing the way it came through. So
Yep.
Anyway, is this? I'm assuming, given that we haven't really filled in these items and we're not looking at filling them until Thursday, this
Oh.
isn't something council can make a move on. The finance committee on.
Yeah, I don't know if we really need to or not. I mean, I think we all agree we need to discuss it a little bit more at the full body. So I think I don't know that we need to vote on anything.
Yeah, to my way of thinking, this should just be a discussion item that's not really
Yep.
for a vote.
Yeah, I agree.
And we can deal with it. Unless, Randy, if you'd rather, we can forward it with no recommendation, but given the gaps, I think we might as well leave it alone.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. All right. Hearing no objections, we're going to move on to item number 2 on our agenda. A resolution authorizing the renewal and extension of the Lifflin Skate Park lease between the city and Lifflin Skate Park. Mayor Slaughter, I see you're on top for that one.
Yep. Yeah, so what you have there before you is just an extension. What we did though, they asked, instead of doing one every single year as we've been doing, if they could just get a 5-year extension. I was okay with it, pending obviously council's approval. Nothing has changed. All I changed was the dates, and I did add one item in there. As far it would be subject each year to inspection by our codes department and our streets and parks department. So it's a 5-year extension. None of the nuts and bolts of the lease have changed at all from the original one, other than since they want to do 5 years, I added in yearly inspection.
Just a quick question. Who is the point of contact through the administration? Do we have that outlined? Is it the recreation director?
Yeah, it'll be Kelly, yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, I would just,
Just in case the leadership of the park changes in the interim. It might be
Right.
helpful to have that outlined.
yeah, it would be Kelly. I was working with Chris Lavecchio, who was representing Lifflin on this, so I just went ahead and forwarded it on.
Good. Well, yeah, it seems a 5-year extension seems like a wise idea to me. We've been making these poor guys come back for a renewal every year or two for close to a decade now, and at some point we might as well transition them over to a longer term. That also gets them into a new administration and gives them like a year to settle in before the new administration has to revisit the lease, which I think will be helpful to both them and to any and to the next administration if there's a changeover. So,
Yeah, the only way it would come back is if Joe Girardi or Adam Winter, one of our streets and parks personnel, finds some major discrepancy in the inspection. Other than
Right.
that, we'll be fine. Which
Yeah.
they're not, Liflin's not, of course, you know Sally, but they said they're not obviously planning on making any changes, so it's going to continue as far
Good.
as structural changes.
yeah, excellent. Other questions from other members of the committee?
Mayor, I'd like to ask you about the insurance.
Yep.
I take it we're paying the insurance?
That's been the same. Nothing's changing there. It's under the umbrella. Joe Pavlak could speak more to it, but it's capped at 3,000 as the cap. And I spoke with Sally and Chris both about this as well. And it's come in significantly under that. Anything that goes over the 3,000 would be paid by Liflin. So
Have there been, just out of curiosity, have there been any suits filed against the skate park at all?
Not to my knowledge. Joe, are you aware of any? Joe's shaking his head.
He's shaking his head no.
I don't know if Councilwoman Mealy's talked to Sally. I don't think there's been any at all, to my knowledge. Over.
I think there was one when it first opened. And that was like Ms. Mealy said, 10 years ago, at least 10 years ago. And I didn't know if anything further has, been done. Anybody has come forward with anything. No, this is a great asset to the city. It really is. Right,
agreed. And I did a little research on that. The insurance, it was kind of back and forth at the very beginning, and then somewhere along the line, the council and administration determined it just made a lot more sense to bring it under the umbrella of the city. And then anything, if there was a suit or something, Councilwoman Katz's point, Liflin's on the hook for anything above that 3,000 mark.
Well, let's face it, they're using the park, not paying any, and they're not getting a revenue for this.
Right.
And this is just for the enjoyment of our citizens, our kids, really. So, it's an important factor. I just wanted to make sure we were covered and that it will continue that way.
And of course, right now it's closed, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, we're covered. It's under the umbrella of the insurance. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Liz, you're muted. Yeah, you're muted.
Thank you, Adam. Are there any further questions? Thanks for asking about the insurance, Bonnie. I meant to ask exactly what our numbers were out there, but
yeah, I think Sally said it came in around 2,000 or so, somewhere in that vicinity. I can get the exact number, but it was significantly under. It's never gone over.
Okay. Good.
And what we can do each year is, I can just give you the update if that's how you want to do it. And Joe Girardi and Adam Winter can say, we inspected and we're good to go.
I think I would like to see that, Mayor, that not that it comes back to us to go over the whole process, but just an update to make sure we're all on the same playing field here.
Yep. Second.
Yeah. That was an exceptionally generous donation on the part of Sally Liflin there a decade ago, and I'm glad to see that it's working out so well and that it's getting utilized. So.
Without the skate park, a lot of properties were getting damaged throughout the city.
Exactly.
So it's an asset. It really is.
Yeah. Well, if there are no further questions or observations, I would take a vote then to forward this to the full body of council.
I make a motion that we pass it on to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, guys. Mr. Cooley, have we been joined by Chief Hagan yet?
Yeah, he's here.
The chief is on.
Okay. Sorry, guys, I'm on my phone, so I can't see who's in attendance. Okay, then we'll move on to item number 3 on the agenda, a resolution authorizing the Williamsport Bureau of Police to hire one officer, Brett Garbrick. Chief Hagan?
Hello, Vice President Mealy, members of council. This is a resolution authorizing the hiring of one police officer, Brett Garbrick. He's currently serving as a police officer in Old Lycoming Township. He is the number 8 person on our civil service list. Brett is 23 years old, is the 2014 graduate of South Williamsport Junior Senior High. He's also a graduate of Messiah College with a bachelor's degree in psychology. He's a graduate of the Mansfield University Act 120 Police Academy late last year, and is an excellent candidate. We're excited about him coming to work here, and with your approval, he will be assigned badge number 55. He also represents number 48 of the 49 officers that we hope to employ here. And I'm ready for any of your questions.
Adam, Bonnie?
Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I've got to get myself off of mute here. Yeah, so Chief, thanks for bringing this forward. 2 weeks ago when we approved the last officer, we had advised some caution, I think, to the fiscal impact of hiring another officer. And I took some time on my end and just kind of, I think, put together some rough numbers of scenarios that we could be facing as a revenue impact to the city. I feel highly confident saying that we are going to experience a revenue impact. Could be $2,000, could be $2 million. That's what we don't know. And we're not really going to know that, in my mind, until November, December. It's a revenue impact is going to be a lagging indicator from an economic perspective here. So in thinking about this over the last couple of weeks, I personally don't know how comfortable I am hiring not only just a new officer, but anybody in City Hall until we can really identify what that's going to be. Sitting in the seats last year and in previous years, I know that we as a city have really struggled to put together a budget that works for the city, even when we have a surplus of $500,000 or what have you. It's even going to be harder to do it if we have even a couple $100,000 shortfall. And I don't know that it's wise or we should even entertain it, hiring people just to have to lay them off 6 months later if we're really indeed going to be in that scenario. So I'm not sure that I'm really comfortable with the new hire specifically. We're back at the number that we started the year with at our force. I think it might be a good idea for right now to maintain the staffing levels that we have. Bonnie, Liz, any thoughts?
I think we should talk to Nick Grimes. When you look at what the budget is, and what it could possibly end up being by the end of the year, the ramifications aren't going to be felt until next year and the year after. And being a business owner, and I think, Liz, you can attest to this, once you lose income, you never make that up, number one. Number two, it's going to take quite a while for all the business to get back up to any kind of revenue. And this kind of scares me from the standpoint of, do we hire somebody and then come the end of the year and we look at our budget and say, I just don't, we're going to have to let somebody go and we're going to have to scale down a lot. And I think this is going to have to be within all of the administration, that any kind of new hire for any positions should be on hold at this point until we find out where we are budget wise. And I think I would like to ask Nick where because I see he's here, to ask him where we're standing right now. I would assume we're okay right now, but what is it going to look like the end of the year and for the following year? Nick, can you give an input on that?
Sure. I think we're okay now. Our revenue has been very good. In fact, Joe has done wonderful with the tax and revenue anticipation. We used very little of that, paid it all back, hardly any interest on it. Real estate taxes appear to be coming in almost normal. We've collected almost $5.5 million in taxes over the last 2 weeks. So I think we're okay. And I think we're going to be okay for this year. I think that you guys are right that the problem then comes at the end of the year and budget time for next year. We don't know what the impact's going to be, and there's a lag. We receive a substantial portion of revenue through business privilege and mercantile taxes, and businesses that are closed or have a decreased revenue, that's going to mean next year decreased taxes for us. The decreased construction in the city is going to mean decreased taxes for us. Earned income tax and local service tax is based on people working and earning income from a job. There will be a decrease there, and we don't know how long it's going to take to get that back to normal. So I guess the question is, do we hire somebody now because we have the money and we need the person, or do we maybe act a little proactively, knowing there's going to be a decrease? And I don't know how that looks being proactive. We're going to need a cost reduction plan no matter what, because it's going to be less revenue. We don't know what it's going to be or how much, but we need some kind of cost reduction plan. And I would love to see a cost reduction plan that doesn't lower the police force. But I know that over the last 5, 6, 8, 10 years, we're still at a lower complement than we were many years ago, and that's with a lot more revenue in the city. Increased taxes, increased business privilege revenue, increased earned income revenue, and a smaller force. So, I mean, if council or the administration could provide a cost reduction plan without lowering the force, then absolutely, I'd be all for it. But I think that we do have the money now, but your concerns are valid. That where are we going to be next year, and what's that going to impact or look like?
Thank you, Nick. I think that's a concern for many of us. What's this going to look like going into 2021? Because we don't know all the ramifications of what everything's going to wash out at the end, and I don't think any of it really is going to be. We're still going to be behind. I don't care what is done. I think we're going to be behind.
Yeah.
I have a couple things that I would like to say in response to some of that. Let me know when that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever, Chief.
Okay. First, we had a force of 51 for 14 years. The cuts that occurred 2 years ago should not have happened. With all due respect to the people making the argument back then, it was entirely financial. From an operational standpoint, it was very dangerous. The manpower levels that the previous administration went down to on 6 out of 21 shifts, they were down to 3 officers per shift at a minimum. That's extraordinarily dangerous. What we are really talking about here, and I'm not trying to be dramatic, but what we're talking about is how many people are on a traffic stop at 3 o'clock in the morning. All right. And that literally in my business means the difference between life and death. All right. Without trying to be too dramatic here. We were at 51 for 14 years. We went to 47. And because of that, we're not even able to put anybody in, for the first time in a quarter century, full-time assigned to the narcotics unit. Now we have a couple people assigned over there right now, but on a temporary status because we don't have enough people yet to have people full-time. So this is a major concern given our the type of crime that we face and the amount of it, and certainly the recent wave of violent crime that you all are aware of. So I understand there's a financial side, but there's also an operational side. And I'm trying to tell you the operational side is we need to have a certain number of people on the street to be safe. And they also need to be able to take a certain amount of vacation and things like that. And we have to schedule all that. We have to train them properly. We can't just make them work and never train them. And once in a while they get sick or injured, and we have to be able to accommodate that. So I think 51, as I said, or 52 was the ideal size. I think 49 is short of that. I understand not wanting to go above 49, but I think stopping short at 47, with all due respect, would be too short. And so I leave it to you. That's my part. Thank you.
I mean, as the one here that probably has the least amount of historical perspective, you know, I can certainly appreciate that, Chief Hagan. You know, I understand that the police department's short. I'm pretty sure we're short across the board, to be honest with you, whether it's fire, whether it's the finance department, whether it's codes, we're short across the board, you know, and I think that this year's budget, to your point, I think it reflected trying to get back to where we all believe we need to be. I can respect that and appreciate that. I think the bigger concern, maybe if I put it this way, I can agree with that. I would like to learn more about that process as far as how we determine what we really need. I would absolutely love to be more engaged with that. I can, at least from the outside, see that we need more. In looking at the potential impact of COVID-19, all of that costs money. We all know that. And, you know, not knowing the true financial impact to the budget with COVID-19, my concern is keep going down that path, and then we have to put ourselves in a position where we have to cut again, and we just delay getting back to where we need to be sooner. If we take the time now, to Nick's point, if we can put a good plan in place to combat the potential loss of revenue that we are going to incur, we can be prepared for when we get to budget time this year. We're already good to go, and hopefully continue down the path of getting to where we need to be. So I guess I'm not saying no, we don't need this officer, or no, we shouldn't hire this officer. I'm saying we should prolong it and we should hold off until we can be at a better place financially later in the year, hopefully, to do it. I think we can get to where we want to get to sooner than later by deferring this, so we can truly understand the impact.
Well, the other unforeseen impact is we don't control who goes to the academy and when. The one that we already hired, Schwab, was delayed from going to the academy because of COVID. He won't be able to go until at least June. And so we won't have him for manpower until probably next year, or later this year, at the very end of the year or next year. And that's when he'll enter the training program. This officer, Garbrick, goes right on the street. Another thing to keep in mind, I just found out today that one of our officers is going to be deployed on military leave for at least 6 months. So we're going to be down on manpower there, and there will be resulting overtime. Also, our ability to field SRO positions and things like that has to be determined by initially meeting our manpower requirements on the street. Now, there are a million scenarios that I could give you, Mr. Yoder. One good example is you go to a burglary in progress. You have to be able to surround that house and communicate with the dispatcher and people inside in a way where if somebody comes out shooting or running, you can contain that person. You need 3 or 4 people at least. And sometimes we have 2 or 3 of those incidents going at once. So our initial response strategy cannot require Penn College to respond. We have to be able to handle our calls, at least on an initial response. Unless we get overloaded with calls, we can't rely on backup right out of the gate. And our manpower is already down to a minimum of 4 on 2 shifts and 5 on the 3rd shift, the busiest shift in the evening. That's the minimum manpower of officers plus a supervisor. So right now, what I'm saying is what will happen if we don't add these positions is either we're going to increase the amount of overtime greatly, or we're going to have to pull people out of special assignments like SRO and narcotics, or both. And I don't want to have to do that, but that's what it's going to come down to if we can't fill these positions, because 47 right now is not going to be 47 because Charles Schwab will be gone for 6 months and another officer is going to be gone for 6 or more months on military leave.
Can I speak real quick on this, the financial side of this subject, and adding 1 additional officer to the complement that's currently at 47?
Yes, please,
Yeah.
Joe.
Just from a financial standpoint and hearing the news of the chief indicating that we're going to have an officer out for 6 months, we're almost midway through the year. So I expect that that's going to take us into the beginning of next year. If there's questions going into the 2020 budget as to where we need to be, I just want to offer out the idea that there is one officer mandated to retire in January of 2020. So with that retirement, or sorry, 2021, with that retirement, that could bring us down hiring this officer today back to the complement of 47 while we evaluate during the budget process as to where we think we can and need to be going into 2021 budget time. I don't know if that helps at all, but being down for 6 months with an office without the officer on military leave and pending him not having any vacation time or other time to use, that would be unpaid leave from our standpoint. They could offset themselves somewhat.
I would, well, and I would also say that Joe just provided us with the overtime numbers, with the police overtime numbers so far this first quarter of this year, which are, it seems to me, a little better than double last year's overtime numbers. So to the extent that that we can, of course, request that the chief mitigate that overtime, because we are doing our best to meet the hiring needs that we have and replace officers who are being deployed and things like that. I suspect it might be in our best interest to make a hire. We could perhaps agree to a postponement of the fourth hire until we have a slightly better sense later in the year of what sort of financial situation we're going to find ourselves in. As Joe points out, especially if someone gets deployed here in the next month or two and isn't back on the force until the beginning of January, when we have a mandated retirement, the force never really gets up above 47 one way or the other. And I do think that there is a point of diminishing returns with overtime where we are, it's actually costing us more to have fewer staff. So I would put that out there as well.
One point on the overtime real quick. The difference between the first quarter last year and the first quarter this year, as you'll recall, the first quarter last year, most of it was done under the policies of the previous police administration. So we had a lower manpower level on 6 out of 21 shifts. There were more OICs at the time. And this year we had 2 officers that went out on significant periods of FMLA with new babies. So there were some differences there. And basically with regard to the minimum manpower, that changed it. Also, the size of the flex shift dramatically decreased from last year to this year with the change in the size of the force. The flex shift is much smaller now than it was back then. So less flexibility and ability to move people around to cover it like we had at the beginning of last year. So, and that's another thing, the size of the flex shift has changed due to the shrinking of the department. But overall, we believe the numbers are going to be down simply because of COVID. We've seen our overtime go way down in the second quarter here, starting in the second quarter. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, because that was kind of a shocking jump to me when I looked at, I believe it was 39,000 first quarter last year and 84 or 89 this year. I need to pull up the documentation. But clearly that right there is approaching well, actually is more than an additional officer's salary. So to the extent that we can mitigate that level of overtime, I think that would be in our best interest.
Yeah.
Adam, Bonnie?
Yeah, Chief, can you remind me, is Brent Garbick proposed to start in June or July?
June 8th, I think, 2020. Was that the date, Chief? It isn't in the resolution. It's not complete in the resolution, but it is in the supporting documentation.
June 8th.
June 8th. Okay. Well, so I wasn't aware of the retirement. If that was mentioned in a previous committee meeting, I missed that, or that is missing my memory here. So thanks for the information. That changes it a little bit for me. I still think it's a wise move for us to table this for 2 weeks. I would like to see the cost analysis between deferring this to later in the year or hiring, and what I'd like to understand that in more detail. I'd like to actually see a little bit of a cost analysis and comparing those options. Liz, to your point, we very well may be in a better financial position because of mitigating overtime by hiring this individual. That makes sense to me. I would actually also, in conjunction with this, I would like to understand the administration's approach to negating some or implementing some kind of a cost reduction plan. Nick had brought it up previously, and I would like to better understand what our plan of attack is going to be or would be with a significant loss of revenue, and how hiring this officer would tie into that. I understand that there's a cost savings by mitigating overtime here, but I'm still not convinced that we're going to have to revisit this at the end of the year at this point.
I think what we're looking at, so many times we're reactive instead of proactive. And I think we want to make sure that come the end of the year, when it is budget time, and I think, Chief, you realize this too, how hard it is to balance all those figures all the way around. And I want to make sure that we're not going to slit our throats with this, that we're looking for more money, because at this point, from what I understand, Nick, what you're looking at is we're probably going to have maybe $1 million deficit. Are you there?
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to tell. It may be $1,000 deficit. It may be a $2 million deficit. I think a lot of it depends on what assistance we receive from the state and federal government, if any, that can actually impact our general fund, and also, how drastic this has affected our local businesses and how long it takes them to get back to normal.
And I think Mr. Grimes' point also is, just speaking for myself as a personal taxpayer in the city, the money for my for this year's taxes was set aside before COVID started. The issue is going to be next year for us, and what the 2021 budget looks like with the contraction in the local economy, and with a contraction in taxpayers' welfare as well. So there will be more immediate impacts, but I think that to a certain extent we're looking at something that we may not feel until 2021, and that is going to make it even harder for us to kind of calculate our expenses. But I would agree, Bonnie and Adam, that shrinking our expenses now will make it less painful whenever the impact becomes evident. That said, it sounds as though what I'm hearing on this particular hire, we're not contemplating the actual hire date until June 8th, one way or the other. Bonnie and Adam, you'd like to understand a little better the elements of the kind of hiring analysis, overtime, people leaving on leave from the police department, or people leaving to be deployed from the police department, and retirements. And you feel as though a 2-week pause and reviewing this item again at our meeting on May, it seems to me it'll be the 13th, would be the wisest way forward?
I would think so, because I think, Chief, we don't want to come to the end of the year and say, we don't have money, okay? And we're going to have to lay off people. You don't want it, and this is a 23-year-old who is, just starting out in his life. And he is working for a Lycoming. And if he comes to us and come the end of the year, we don't have the money in the budget for this, that would be very disheartening to him. It really would. And I think I would like to see your figures as far as the overtime, the retirement that's coming up that Joe said, and the overtime. Let's try and make sure that nobody's going to get screwed in the end. Okay. That's the only way I can put it out there. So I think in 2 weeks, I would like to see if you can get those figures together and work with Joe as far as how that is, that we're going to all feel comfortable in that position.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is that one of you would need to make a recommendation to the full body of council to table.
Yeah, correct. And I'll make a motion to table this until for
You
2
can't make a
weeks.
motion to table, you have to make a recommendation to table.
Yeah, we can table it here, I believe. We can table it and just leave it in committee.
My understanding is we can't table within committee. It has to be tabled by the full body of council.
Oh,
That's what I went through that with one of our meetings, Liz, and
yeah.
I was told we couldn't do it.
I talked to Norm about Robert's rules in general, and I was of the impression that we could. But if we want to forward it to the full body, I'd say just with like no recommendation, we can do that. I believe with Robert's rules, we can absolutely table in committee.
Okay, I'm not gainsaying you. I'm just, all of the received wisdom I've had from our solicitors has indicated that we can't table in committee. So it's certainly worth looking into, but we won't be able to do it right now.
Yeah, and that's fine. Then I would make a motion to forward this to the full body of council with no recommendation.
Before we go any further with this, Mayor, are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay, with all of your discussions with state and federal people and other governors and mayors of other cities, is there going to be funding? Is there going to be funding coming through for the safety factor of our cities?
It's just as Nick was alluding to, it's a waiting game right now. We just don't know. We've all sent letters of support to the state and federal representatives, and there's, obviously what it looks like is it's going to be some type of formula so that it's equitable for all of the municipalities throughout the whole country. So it appears as though there's going to be some level of funding to the states from the federal to the state. The state could add to it or not add to it, and then work off of a formula so that it's each municipality gets their fair share. But as of right now, no, we haven't received any confirmation one way or the other as to what the feds are going to do, other than the money we've already received, of course, CDBG and transit dollars. So as far as getting another $1 million, for example, into the operating fund, into the general fund, there's been nothing out of that. I think what we're all seeing is that the next round of the federal government, the CARES Act, phase 3.5 or 4, whatever we're at now, is going to be, that's where they're working to get that funding for the municipalities under, initially 500,000 more, than 50,000, and now, it just needs to be a formula for all of us so that it's fair. Whether you're a 10,000, population of 10,000 or population of 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
But are there people going to be keeping on top of this to make sure that we have our fingers in the pot if it's available?
Absolutely, we're on top of it every single day.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will second Adam's motion.
Got it. And let me note that, even if we are fortunate enough to receive money on high that can go directly into our general fund to bolster our public safety forces, which would be terrific. Mm-hmm. It's not entirely clear to me that there's federal money really either. So
no, we just don't know right now.
Yeah. It's a whole other component of this that's unclear. I mean, we don't know what our revenue is going to look like, but we don't know what the federal and state funding is going to look like. We know what we don't know. What we don't know is a lot, unfortunately. So
right, and we know that that the pandemic is breaking, governmental budgets worldwide. So exactly what the impact of the whole thing is going to be is unclear. But what is clear is that even if we're getting money from the federal government or the state government, they're not necessarily in any better of a position to be giving it to us than we are. To be utilizing our own funds. So, it's a huge question mark. And it's
another, I'm sorry, Councilwoman.
Sure.
I was just going to add another piece is that we know that criminals are not staying inside for COVID-19. So as we will review clearly our finances, and we are reviewing them, public safety is an area that we're really going to have to look hard at. I'm not comfortable at the moment with cutting public safety, particularly given the recent what's happened here recently. We need to keep our officers and our community safe, but we can review those finances and provide the reports that you want here in 2 weeks. Absolutely.
I think that would be a wise idea. And I think maybe what Adam and Bonnie are looking for more than anything else is just we know that we authorized 49 hires at the end of 2019. We know that we authorized 49 officers at the end of 2019. We also know that the situation in 2020 has changed dramatically in the meantime. And I think perhaps what the Finance Committee in the long run is requesting is just a little more due diligence before we look at new hires. Just a little more information. So,
Yeah, I mean, specifically, I'll simply say, Derek, I agree with you, Chief Hagan. I agree with you as well. I mean, you go around, you talk to the citizens of the city. Public safety is a big concern. It's as big of a concern as taxpayer money being spent here in the city. So both of these issues go hand in hand. You know, I think the biggest ask is I want to see a plan to how we're going to combat the potential loss of revenue. So that way we're prepared and we can get the police force as well as the fire, as well as our city services to where they really need to be faster, rather than not planning for it now and then having to cut, and we're just that much further back later in the year, beginning of 2021. So,
I had one thing I wanted to ask. First, I just wanted to say what this means is we'll actually be at 45 as soon as Officer Heitzman gets deployed and Officer Schwab goes to the academy. We're going to be down to 45 for at least 6 months, unless we hire this guy, which it doesn't seem like we're going to do right away anyway. And the one after Garbrick has got to go to academy too for more than 6 months. So the longer we delay that person, the longer it will take then for them to go to an academy. So the number is going to be 45, not 47. We'll have 47, but one won't be in the country and the other one's not going to be here. The other question, or just the question I have in general, is we have a meeting on Thursday. Should I tell Brett Garbrick not to join the Zoom meeting now? I mean, do we expect not to hire him, or what should I tell him?
My understanding from the other two members of the Finance Committee is that their preference is to forward this to the full body of council with no recommendation, a sort of a recommendation to table based on our discussion for 2 weeks, pending a little more kind of financial due diligence. I don't necessarily get the sense that that means that the hire won't be happening in 2 weeks' time. It just depends on the numbers that we look at in the meantime. But it would sound to me as though Mr. Garbrick probably wouldn't need to attend Thursday's meeting unless, I mean, it's impossible to say, Chief, but because it's impossible to know the will of the other 4 members of council. And I'm actually not in complete agreement with Ms. Katz and Mr. Yoder either, but I can completely understand an argument for doing our due diligence and getting some numbers before we make a final decision. So I think I would probably recommend that he hold off and plan to attend the meeting in mid-May that we have scheduled. But I would yield to Mr. Yoder and Mrs. Katz just in case they feel that even that's not a recommended course of action.
No, you just scared me, Chief, with the number of 45. I don't think we've ever been down to 45, ever.
Not in a very long time, if ever. We had 72 in the early 70s. We've gone as low as 49, 46, 47. I've never seen 45 or even heard of that number, and we'll be that way for a long time. And then when Mark Sechrist leaves in January, it would actually be lower until we hire another one, or until Schwab or Heitzman comes back. So again, what will happen in the immediate future is the SRO and the drug officers will have to be pulled back to patrol. That's just going to have to happen.
Well, we're just asking for
SRO
2 weeks.
Now anyway, correct?
What did you say?
Not
Les?
right now because school's out, but as soon as school goes back in, we have an agreement with them to put them back in there full time. So, I mean, but ultimately we have to staff the patrol shifts with the minimum levels that we require. So if we get too low, we're just going to have to put everyone on patrol. or most everyone.
Chief, even if we, since we're waiting for 2 weeks, just to get the numbers. So I think, I know Adam and I feel comfortable with this. That's still not going to jeopardize anything with him starting in June. I would just like to see numbers. That's all there is to it. And 2 weeks is not going to jeopardize that at all. We're not saying no to the hire. We just want to make sure we're not going to be sorry for that person come December.
I think,
Okay. And it sounds like
I-
what Joe was saying, it's going to be fine.
Just
Right. My only concern is the real numbers that, and we don't know them.
just
That
from
we
Bonnie,
have. None of us will know what impact COVID's going to have yet.
You went mute on us, Chief.
Oh, that's just my concern, is that the primary concern here, which Mr. Yoder mentioned right away, was the impact of COVID itself, which is the $1 million level potential impact. And none of us know that. In the meantime, we have to field these patrol shifts safely. And when these officers get hurt, I have to be able to explain why to their families. And we're dealing with some dangerous people out here. I mean, this is not Muncie and it's not Jersey Shore here. We're dealing with some dangerous situations. A lot of people with guns and drugs shooting at each other, and 3 and 4 people out on the street just isn't enough sometimes. So I appreciate all your consideration, and we'll get all those reports together that you asked for. But in all honesty, my concern is just that the numbers you seek are the ones we don't know yet.
Well, it's not going to jeopardize, like I said, him starting in June, because it comes back in 2 weeks. That's fine. He's still going to make the start date okay, as far as I'm concerned. That's not a problem. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page as where we are. Like Ms. Mealy said, the overtime, that would justify it right there.
And I'll second that, Councilwoman Katz. I mean, I think the biggest thing we're asking for is to have a plan in place to combat what we're expecting, and to be and then we would like to understand what that plan is in 2 weeks. That's the big thing, with both understanding the finances better on the police hire specifically, but also the administration's approach to combating the revenue shortfall that we are likely to hit. And what that's going to look like. We're just asking for a plan. It's not going to impact. I don't see it impacting this hire specifically. Just asking for 2 weeks to figure all that out.
yeah. So let's look at that then in terms of offering some direction on the financial information we're looking for to Joe Pavlak and Derek and Chief Hagan. It sounds as though what we're asking for is sort of an analysis of the impact of overtime, the impact on overtime of making both this hire and the next hire that the chief is proposing, because we might as well put it out for both hires if we're contemplating 2 hires. So we need to talk about the impact of deployments, the impact of the training time for both the young woman that we hired last meeting, as well as Mr. Schwab, and the impact of the retirement, a sort of a comprehensive plan, if you will, to show us that these hires will actually reduce expenditures in the department via reducing overtime costs, via reducing exposure, and liability, et cetera, et cetera. And I, that is not something that we have traditionally asked for when we're contemplating new hires in the police department. So I understand why there's a little bit of hesitation here, but this financial situation that we are going to find ourselves in for the next year is also somewhat unprecedented. And I think that it's important that all of us have a firm grasp of what those numbers look like. And so that may be something that we need to get into the habit of doing moving forward for every new hire. How is this person going to save us money, as well as, as well as providing us services? But Chief, better or for worse, I think you're just the first guy on deck here.
Well, and a lot of it is best laid plans. I can give you extraordinarily well thought out plans, and then one of my guys can go ride a horse and fall off of it, and we could have thousands of dollars of overtime because of an off-duty injury. And so some of this is incalculable. It's
I
just
agree with the chief on this. I mean,
we
how
had
are we
two
to
guys that
develop?
just had babies and they were out, and that created overtime. So there's just stuff that you can't plan for. Just keep that in mind.
But during this whole discussion, we've kept talking about how it's uncertain. We don't know what the impacts are going to be. Now we're being asked to put together a plan for what is going to happen when we don't know. From this new hire standpoint, you also have to look at it. What happens if things get worse with this COVID pandemic and we start to have officers go out or other circumstances there? Having this person in there who's ready to go on the street, correct me if I'm wrong on that, he does not need to go to the academy. He can start right off the bat, so we have someone there to assist us with mitigating potential overtime costs. Again, this is another potential, but it's the same thing with the potential impacts to revenue and everything else. How do you want us to go about, and how won't we get criticized for a plan that we put together that doesn't meet what we're looking to do?
I mean, everyone knows that the future is unpredictable, and I think bringing up the pandemic's potential impact on the police force is one of those key unpredictable elements. Joe, you're right. No one is necessarily holding you to it, but I think what I'm hearing questions about, especially from the other members of the finance committee, is simply that we've talked about some very basic stuff that we've never sort of seen laid out for us. That is to say, we have an officer coming up who's retiring. We have already doubled overtime over last year in the first quarter of this year. So, just kind of explain to us the extent to which additional hires in the department, when they will stage in, depending on when they're hired, and the extent to which they may be able to mitigate staffing shortages that we know will be occurring. I don't think anyone's looking to actually, Bonnie and Adam, this is more your ball game than mine. So I'm happy to yield to either of you, but I don't believe that anybody's looking for something that we can point to 6 months from now and say, you told us that this is what was going to happen with overtime.
No, that's not what I'm asking for at all.
You'll have the report by Friday. You will have the report by Friday with all the details that you require.
Well,
Okay.
no, and I appreciate that. And I guess from a broader level, when I talk about a cost reduction plan, I'm just simply asking, look, we don't know what the impact's going to be, but we know we think it could be within X and Y amount of range. So if it's the worst, which is potentially a couple $1 million, let's plan for the worst. And how would we combat that? So that way, when it's only the best case scenario or none, we're that much further ahead, and we can continue with these plans of getting the city back to where it needs to be from our public safety areas, our general administrative areas, what have you. I'm asking to plan for the worst.
We're involved in that, sir. And one of those plans, as a matter of fact, since you brought it up, involves, for instance, an entire patrol shift getting sick all at one time and needing to be quarantined. What do we do? Well, one of the things we probably shouldn't do is reduce the size of our workforce in the middle of a pandemic that requires more people because people are getting sick. Albeit, I understand the costs here and the financial side, but just one of the issues is reducing the size of the workforce in the middle of a pandemic when it's an essential workforce is a concern of mine, because I'm looking at a situation where we have shootings to investigate, but if everyone starts getting sick, I may have to put detectives back in uniforms and go to 12-hour shifts just to be able to field enough cops. So that's another concern as well.
I think we've established that there are a lot of moving parts here, and that ideally moving forward, if Mayor Slaughter's right, and we are one of the earlier cities to have a lot of our restrictions lifted, that we won't wind up in a situation where we have a whole bunch of officers out sick with the coronavirus. That said, that's an unknown quantity, you know, it pretty much, I think when you get one, you get many. So, so we'll hope for the best there. All of that said, since we've requested further documentation, the administration has agreed to provide it here in a timely fashion so that we can review it before the next meeting. I think it would be most expedient for us at this point to move forward with the motion I heard on the table to send this to the full body of council with no recommendation on Thursday night. And I heard a second.
Right,
That's
Okay.
correct.
yes,
Then I would take a vote on that. All in favor?
aye,
Okay, all
Aye.
opposed, okay, great. All opposed, nay. Janice, for the record, I think that was 2 in favor and 1 opposed. And then that actually is the final voting item on our agenda for today. Are we okay with moving on, everyone?
yepper,
Okay, great. Final voting item on our agenda. The remaining items on the agenda are any related items, and we actually have a massive number of those thanks to Mr. Pavlak this year. Excuse me, guys. That's my daughter. Hi, Jace. Good night,
Is
sweetie.
there anything for the police department?
No, I don't believe that there are. I'll yield to Mr. Pavlak on that, but I don't think there's anything that should be a question for the police in particular. Joe,
I think you've already discussed the
DOT.
overtime, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Have a nice day then. Thank you.
thank you very
Chief.
much.
bye, chief.
Bye. Okay, so then the final item is any related items. We have Joe, it seems to me Q4 financial reports, like basically the draft reports for the year of 2019, as well as the first quarter financial reports for 2020. And we had the police overtime reports that we discussed already to a certain extent. And then as Mr. Grimes already referenced, the very good news about the tax anticipation note. Thank you, Joe. We also have some documentation that we received yesterday related to our financial positions vis-a-vis a handful of grants that the city has in process. And I think that we should discuss those. I also, there may be further questions that we'll need to return to those for here in another couple of weeks. Joe, how would you prefer to start off? You want to talk about the financial statements first or the grant elements?
We can talk about the financials first. Just what I've provided was I think we're trying to do these now on a quarterly basis. So you'll have the first draft of the fourth quarter 2019 and the first report for 2020. Just looking at a broad overview of the 2019 year-end report. What we're looking at right there when comparing to budget is we're around, I want to say about $100,000 over where we expected that we would come in. Now there are still some significant entries, potential significant entries that could impact that number. But right now I feel that it will increase that position versus decrease the position when compared to the 2020 budget proposal. So with that being said, if there's any specific questions related to items within that report or the other, I can do my best to offer information.
Okay. Other members of the Finance Committee?
I have nothing.
You have nothing? I did have some questions here, Joe, but I'm opening up the document here. I apologize. Adam, have you got any questions about the fourth quarter reports?
Right now, no.
Okay. So, Joe, a lot of my questions centered around you say that we are about $100,000 over where we anticipated to the good.
Correct.
Last year's budget, but that we have some large expenditures or some large
revenue. The only thing that I haven't booked because I'm still waiting on one component for the entry is the Benecon health surplus.
I was wondering about that.
That is not included in that number, but on the offset of that, for the reporting purposes, we also have to record our claims incurred but not recorded. So if I was injured and incurred a health bill at the end of December of 2019, but the insurance didn't pay that bill until January, the claim would be incurred but not recorded.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for that component to offset the revenue that we're expecting. And right now I'm looking at a couple $100,000. The net figure is what I'm expecting, but I don't have the final numbers to lock that number in.
I also noticed that we didn't seem to have any revenue registered from employee contributions for healthcare.
That's also in these reports net against the employee's expense.
Okay.
When we budget the expense, and we budget that at the full amount, not the employer only share. And then we budget an amount to offset that in the revenue categories up with the surplus line.
Got it. Other things that I noticed, and unfortunately I cannot remember what we did with them this year. Obviously our permit income was dramatically under what we had budgeted for 2019.
I think that relates to some expansion at the health system at UPMC.
Yep, anticipated. That isn't happening this year either. It doesn't seem correct.
And this year, I think we've budgeted at a more typical construction-free summer, or non-significant construction project summer.
Right. Although the month and a half construction halt is probably still going to bring us in under the permit numbers we budgeted this year. We'll have to see, but I think it's going to make investors and developers leery of new development, such that it may impact our numbers this year too. The other question, I also noticed that we budgeted a substantial amount of recreation program income that we didn't receive last year, which we recognized as not only a possibility but a likelihood. But are we setting the same expectations for the recreation department this year and in future years, or are we going to scale back our income estimates there moving forward?
If I recall, we budget the programs to operate at full capacity. And it's expected if the revenue is down, so will the expenditures. So the offset there, I don't know if the other piece that you're talking about was the donations that we
had a sponsorship category that was basically void.
Correct.
I think we'd paid 20,000 in sponsorships and gotten nothing.
Yeah, and that's something that was pulled out of the 2020 budget.
Okay. Yeah, that
so if we get that, great, but if we don't, it's not being counted upon.
Good. And then I'm just trying to think about I apologize. I reviewed these last night, but was not smart enough to figure out how to make comments on them on my computer. So it looked as though we were pretty close to the max budgetarily in the police department last year. It seems to me we'd expended 96% of the police budget, 98 perhaps. And the same, that is to say the majority of our departments were showing basically full expenditures. Is that usual for a year, Joe? You'll pardon me for not having a strong recollection year over year.
I'd have to look from year to year from a percentage standpoint. I know that over the past number of years, in order to attain budget goals, obviously you're reducing departments' numbers. So you would expect them to get closer if one point they were further apart. So we're coming in within budget on the departments, and I think that that's the piece that we need to stay in tune with the tight budget constraints that we've had in the past.
Right. Yeah, understood. I would still point out, let me see here. that we did have a, you know, at least according to your existing budget, we had a fund balance. We had deficit spending last year by this documentation of about 1.2 million,
Yes.
1.25 million, right? So that means that we won't be able to run a budget as large as this past year's this year, if we don't somehow or another find that deficit spending amount of 1.25 million. So now we can hope that to get marginally better with the Benecon element, so that we're looking at maybe deficit spending last year of about 1 million, correct? Hopefully.
Of this year, yes. Yes,
Okay.
we should be a deficit of 1 million or so, yes.
Okay. Which is terrifying. Actually, years past we have not run a deficit budget, for better or for worse. So that's an unfortunate milestone if we achieve it here. And the one last note that I had to offer on the last year's documents is that, of course, we woefully underperformed in terms of our budgeted income for both licenses and permits and charges for services. However, shout out to Mr. Grimes in the treasurer's office, who it seems to me drove a program that increased the city's earnings for interest by about $90,000, or about 4 times what was anticipated in last year's budget. Is that correct?
Yes, with some help from Bill Nichols and Joe Pavlak, we collectively worked on that. But again, to the point of preparing for the future, we're not going to see that for quite some time.
Right.
I think we were at just over 2% for our liquid assets that we were earning, things that were checking accounts mainly. They lowered that to under 0.5% recently.
Yes. Okay. So we can't anticipate another $120,000 in interest income in 2020. So Adam, if you're keeping a tally of ways in which we are likely to not be making as much money for the general fund this year as in years past, you might as well tack that on.
Yeah, Joe, I actually sent you I took some time over the past couple weeks and tried to put together, not to get too far off topic here, a little bit of a model as to what we might be expecting from a revenue loss. I emailed it to you, and I have some notes to the right of the revenue tab or the income tab as to where I'm pulling my rationale from. So you'll see on that, and Liz, Bonnie, I could forward that to you too as well. But you'll see on there anywhere from a 400,000 shortfall to a 1.8 million dollar shortfall. Again, just trying to figure it out one way or the other. So, and the reason I say this is that is an area that I think is reflected in that model, Liz.
Mm-hmm. Good. Excellent.
Back to your comment earlier, the deficit spending we were talking about, please realize that's budget deficit. It's not our actual deficit. We actually had income or revenues were over expenses with where we stand currently for 2019. But from a budgetary standpoint, we budgeted expecting a $1.25 million deficit.
Got it. I apologize, Joe. I closed the document down. But
I wasn't sure whether we were talking about actual versus budget. I just wanted to clarify that was a budget deficit versus an actual end of year deficit.
Right. So hopefully, well, we know that we won't see the absolute numbers sort out for quite a while, but hopefully we find ourselves in a in a slightly better position come report time. Yeah, it looks like I'm looking at 128,000. So hopefully we get 300 or so. Okay, Bonnie, Adam, anything further?
Not for me.
Okay. Then Joe, can you give us a real brief rundown on the first quarter reports for this year?
I really haven't looked at those too much. It's tough to evaluate.
Anyway,
Sorry. I'm sorry.
so that might make all of us.
Well, it's tough to evaluate after one quarter. You know, things start spreading themselves out throughout the year. And with the uncertainty of everything that's happened, I don't think it's something that we can say we're doing good now and it's going to, you know, change in the near future. Revenues appear to be down, but that I think can be traced somewhat into the amount of drawdowns on the tax anticipation note from a tax standpoint or the tax category. So I think that we're pretty on pace from a revenue standpoint as to where we were last year. And the same thing appears to be the case year to or quarter to quarter on the expenditure side.
Okay. Yeah, I sort of had a brief look over this, but didn't it seems like it's so hard to tell with the early numbers that I didn't make many projections here. Bonnie and Adam, do you have any questions on the first quarter reports?
No, but thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you very much for providing these, Joe. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Moving on to the Bowman Field, East 3rd, and Destination 2014 summaries that we received. I didn't have any particular questions about either Bowman or Destination 2014 that I recorded. Adam or Bonnie, did you have any questions for Joe on those?
No.
No, I'll be fully honest. After getting them last night, I have not had a chance to look at them yet. With the whole reopening and what have you for construction, I have been slammed. And I was the one that asked for them. So thank you, Joe, for sending them over. I will look at them, and if I will follow up with you directly with any questions.
Please do. I'm sure that there's additional information that we were looking for, but just with everything that's been happening and limited staff, whatever, it's tough to prepare extra stuff or pull everything that's wanted. So I'm willing to add to the information that was sent. I just need to know specifically what items and ask for some time to gather stuff as we slowly move towards opening.
Yeah, no worries. And like I said, this is my effort to start to just get up to speed with some of the history here. So I'll get there, and as I do, I'll reach out with any questions or any added information that I need. So thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I think, Joe, if it's all right, I did sort of review the items, but I think I prefer to have a slightly more robust discussion about it in 2 weeks' time when everybody's had time to give it a bit more of a going over.
Yeah.
Especially because we're getting close to an hour and a half here on today's meeting, and it just seems like it might be a good time to call it. So would it be okay if we all agreed to take a couple of weeks to look at these items and ask any further questions that we might have of both Joe and Delta Development? And then we'll discuss these at the meeting that we have in mid-May. Does that sound all right?
Sounds good.
So just hearing that you'd like to see if I can get Delta to jump on the conversation for the meeting in 2 weeks.
I think that might actually be I know that I had a couple of questions specifically related to the grant funding.
Sure.
And to the summary that Teresa provided, which was nice and included a lot of very good information, but I still wanted to understand it a little bit better.
Sure.
So if it'd be possible for Delta to come to the finance meeting in 2 weeks' time, that'd be excellent.
I'll reach out to see what we can get them to do.
Perfect. All right, fantastic. Then I will talk to you guys next week. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Have a wonderful, beautiful sunny Tuesday, and I will see everyone on Thursday night.
Gotcha.
Joe,
Bye-bye.
real quick.
Pardon?
No, you're good. I had something really quick that I wanted to ask of Joe, and I just remembered it now. You and I had briefly chatted about maybe looking at refinancing some of our outstanding bond issues. That was really before a lot of, I think, the Federal Reserve rates went down to zero. I don't know if that's something that we have looked at recently or since COVID-19 has really been as impactful as it has, but it might be something that we might want to explore. I know time is limited on your end, but
Yeah, right. That last we talked about it, I think you had reached out to Derek and myself, and the conversation, I kind of put it on the back burner because I wasn't exactly sure what we could do since we last refinanced in 17, and I don't know how many times you can refinance, refinance, and refinance. I think that if we want to try to pursue it, it's going to take some time. I'll have to determine whether we're eligible to pursue additional refunding and refinancing. And if we are, how long is it going to take? The question that you have now is when the rating agencies come in to look at you with the uncertainty of everything else that's going on, how's that going to affect any rating that they may provide you with? Yeah. So it may be worth something, maybe something worth pursuing, but I'm not sure how it would play out. So I'll make a note to see if I can reach out to, maybe I'll touch base with Dave Smith to see what he's seeing on other ends, because I know that from the school district market, he's dealt with that before, so he might have some insight on that and thoughts as to whether or not that'd be good for us to follow up with.
Yeah, it's just potentially another tool to kind of help us with cost savings and what have you. So we're not going to see anything like this for a long time, I hope.
No, we're not. But there's also a significant cost to the refunding.
Correct.
You know, council, bond council, the bond insurance, things of that nature. So, you know, how much of that will offset and what can we do? But yeah, I'll reach out to them to see whether it might be prudent to reach out to previous bond counsel and explore that.
Cool. I appreciate it. If you need anything from me, let me know. I don't know much more than the idea I can offer, but I'm happy to help wherever I can.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you Thursday if I don't talk to you before. Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.